Good day, folks. Jonathan Milam here, and I'm going to be talking today about how to de-lacquer, take the lacquer off, say, an old vintage horn or even a newer horn, and how to clean them up afterwards. And of course, then more importantly, to my way of thinking, is the interior cleaning of the horn. We're in the midst of the coronavirus situation. Very unfortunate, very unpleasant, but if anything, to those of us that are playing horns, we really do not want to get involved with the horn of another person, especially if it's come through the mail and we're not certain what their situation is. There is a good way at home to disinfect and clean your horns. I've never paid $100 for the cleaning process that they have. I understand it's efficient and effective. And I'm happy for you if you'd like to spend $100 that way. I'd rather spend my $4 or $5 on the stuff that I need and get a job done that is not only effective, but I know it's thoroughly clean. And I've got horns from guys that said, oh, I just had this chemically cleaned. And I'd look in the lead pipe and think, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. In fact, I sold a horn to a guy one time and I bought it back. And he said, I've had it chem cleaned since we used it. It wasn't as clean as when I sent it to him. So anyway, there's lots of things we can do. First of all, we've got antiseptic mouth rinse here. It's the Equate version of Listerine. And what I use this for is personal hygiene. Just a little humor there, but it never hurts to be a step ahead. If there were more than one person in the room, I would mask up. But since I'm trying to be heard and I'm all alone at the moment, I won't be using that. In the way of disclaimers, anytime you're using chemicals, you want to very closely follow the directions that are given by the manufacturer and the distributor of the chemicals. It's always a good policy to have gloves on hand. Latex, there's different types. What are these? Nitrile exam gloves. Got them from my son who's studying medicine. So it's definitely good, even with some of the milder chemicals that I'm using later, which is white vinegar. That will dry your hands out so bad. Sometimes 36 or 48 hours after I've used it, my skin will start flaking if I did not use gloves. It's a very stringent disinfectant, as well as an extremely effective cleaner. But we'll get to that later. When you try to de-lacquer a horn, it can be extremely easy. With some vintage horns that I've had, all you need is hot water. Some guys actually will take a horn apart and put it in the dishwasher. You definitely get hot water that way. Of course, a builder told me one time, run the water until it's hot in the tap, and then when the dishwasher starts, which is usually adjacent to the sink, the water is going to be hot when it begins. So I've run horns through the dishwasher before. Not convinced that it does very much, but maybe it's dishpan clean. Who knows? At any rate, I've got here a Cornet that I got in. It is a Con 80A. Tons of these horns around. Nice thing about them is they've got the adjustable tuning slide here. But at any rate, this horn actually had nice lacquer on the bell. I'm almost certain it had been re-lacquered, but it was really horrible in this area here. So I used a couple of things. This is Aircraft paint remover, non-methylene chloride is what it says. I've used this for years, put out by Clean Strip. Sometimes it's effective and sometimes it's not. I wonder if they're not changing the range of chemicals that they use with this. And if you read what all's in here, it's an eyeful. But sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. Might be more effective with some types of lacquer than others. New horns these days have what I'm told is more of an epoxy than a lacquer. Very difficult to strip a new horn. And I'm in the process of doing the first new horn that I've ever wanted to strip. But at any rate, with this horn here, hot water took a lot of it off, but not all of it. So actually, the best thing that I've found, at least it's the most effective thing that I'm using now, is Easy Off Oven Cleaner. I buy it at a local store. They also have a blue, which doesn't seem to be as effective. And most of this stuff I've picked up at trumpetherald.com over the years. I, like to find my own way through things, and I've tried a number of different things. You can use this aircraft paint remover in an aerosol, which I've used before, or this. I've used clean strip lacquer remover, kind of a burnt orange. But the most efficient thing I've found to date is Easy Off. Now, I left it a long time on this horn because some of the lacquer, and with cornets, it gets really congested when you're trying to do it. Now, what we've got is a horn that's showing some blackness. This is a reaction of the brass, I believe, with the cleaner. Not a problem, really. All it takes is flitz, which is what I use for everything, for my final clean and polish. I've used this on gold-plated horns, silver-plated horns, bare brass, copper, bronze, nickel, silver. This is the ticket as far as I'm concerned. It is the best I've seen. You can get it at some auto stores. Ace Hardware, I've found that. You can order it on the internet perhaps. But flitz is what I use, and it is the best. I use it for every horn I have. I don't even use silver polish, anything like that, unless there's a special need. But flitz is my go-to. And you can see I used it on the bell of this horn, so you get a very attractive, very bright gold look. And for the rest of the horn, I haven't yet applied it. Again, it's a good idea to use, although this, they say, is very green, very low grit, which is one reason I like to use it. In fact, I've used this on the hard plastic of headlights to clear them up a little bit. I've used it as an oven cleaner. I've used it on stainless steel refrigerator exteriors to clean it up. I'm tempted to brush my teeth with it. Just kidding. But it's efficient and effective for all of the horns that I've used. Now, the one thing is, you'll want to use gloves with this, even though it's extremely mild, and I don't believe it would hurt your hands, although I'm still suggesting gloves, but they get extremely black as it removes the surface layer of whatever you're working with. And that black will not only coat your hands, it can get under your fingernails. You get that mechanic look if you're not careful. Grease that will not come out readily or quickly. Okay, so after we've cleaned a horn, then the exterior, and I'll spray this, usually, I think for an oven, it says leave it on for 4 minutes. I'll just gauge, I'll get the horn out. This is $4.50 or so. So it's not a deal breaker. I'll rinse the horn off. If it's not done, I'll do it again. This horn was a little bit harder. I've left horns 2 hours with that stuff on for some lacquer, and more recently the epoxy on a Carroll brass horn. I assume it's epoxy. Very, very tough material to remove. When I'm through with that, I'll rinse the horn off and use any dishwashing detergent. Doesn't seem to be a lot of difference to me, just to get it clean, and then I will use the flitz. So, De-Lacquer, this is my choice. Rinse with water, soap it off, and then after it's dry, use the flitz. You put the flitz on, you take the flitz off. You'll need a rag, which is going to become very black. I actually bought old cloth diapers for a long time. You can buy different material stores. I usually get them in the auto area of department stores or an auto shop. Just cheap rags is all you're looking for. They will become black. They will not return to white, to the best of my experience at any rate. After you've darkened one, you finally get one until it's clean, working through all the crooks. When I'm putting a horn back together, I am extremely intent on doing a good job. My go-to slide grease is Selmer. I use this on everything. I put a dab everywhere. When I'm putting the valves back in, I'm going to put a dab of that grease before I screw the valve cap in, because I don't want the valve cap sticking in there. And if you've had water in there recently, if you've cleaned your horn, I think it's quite likely that you could get it stuck. So I'm going to want to use this on everything. I use it on the valve caps, top and bottom. I'll put a dot on each side of the thread, front, fore, and back, and screw it on. That way you get a really tight horn. You've not got loose metal against metal that could vibrate. I think you get a better tone when your horn is really lubricated and it's put together well. When I'm cleaning the interior of a horn, and this is from Tony Scodwell, great trumpeter that played for years as Doc Severinson's first in several different bands, and great contributor at Trumpet Herald. Sometimes I'll just Google Tony Scodwell and see what he's put up last. But I'll take a plastic container like this. You want 2/3. This is white vinegar, distilled white vinegar, quite inexpensive, tremendous disinfectant and cleaner, and 1/3 of dishwashing liquid. Tony Scodwell does suggest Dawn, and personally I like it, but my wife doesn't have any right now. So anyway, I'll take this container, I'll fill it half full of this vinegar, and then I will dump all of the slides, and I'll take the valves apart and leave them in this. 2/3 white vinegar and 1/3 dishwashing liquid. And I'll just leave them in there a few minutes while I'm working on the rest of the horn. And I'll also dip into that when I'm working with the horn. And I'll take some of the dishwashing liquid and just dip this snake in that liquid and then send it down the lead pipe all the way through the horn. Of course, I've got all the slides out, and very easy to clean everything. In fact, I'll go in through the open slide and I'll clean it. Even though this is a valve brush and it's made for a larger area, I'll make sure that I've got plenty of vinegar and dishwashing liquid, and I'll clean the inside of the slide area. Tuning slides, first and second and third, all of those going to be cleaned well. I'll use that same liquid on the inside of the valves, top and bottom, get everything perfectly clean. When I'm almost through and I've removed all of the slides and stuff from here, I'll just pour it into the bell. And again, you've got your snake, you can go in. It's amazing how much material you'll find in the main crook of the bell. It's just amazing. Once you've done that, you've been through the entirety of the horn with your snake and or your valve cleaning brush. Everything has been cleaned, everything. The one thing you'll want to be sure that you do is then rinse the horn out clearly with water. If you've got a big sink like this, it's so nice. If you've got a little half sink, just be careful when you're setting the horn in that you don't get it banged up too terribly much. Now, when I'm through with that, everything's clean, it's ready to go back together. I'm going to put a few drops of valve oil in the slides before I'm ready for the slide. And I'm going to rinse my valve brush out, and I'm going to go in and move that oil around through all of the valves, couple of 3 drops in each one. I don't want the valves to go in dry, and I don't want just the valves to be oiled up. I want the valve casing to be oiled up as well. So it's a smooth transition. You certainly don't want to be forcing anything. I think about the only other brush that is of real benefit to us is a mouthpiece brush. It's amazing how filthy mouthpieces become and how quickly they can become filthy. Well, I thought I had a little mouthpiece here, but I'm not seeing it. Very easy. Work this in from the bottom of the mouthpiece, and you can work it around the top as well. The only other brush that I've found to be really important to me is an old toothbrush. a lot of times you'll get a tremendous amount of gunk on the bottom valve cap. And you're not going to get that out with a valve brush, a snake, but a toothbrush works tremendously to get in there. Again, you're using your vinegar and dishwashing liquid and get everything clean just like it should be. Valve cap tops, not that much of a problem. Okay, I think I've run across how to de-lacquer a horn. You've got your option here, whatever works best for you and the lacquer you're working with. Of course, always gloves. When you're using these materials, be very careful. I think the manufacturer instructions are that you stay a safe distance away. You do not want to be inhaling this material, and you certainly don't want to get it on open skin and leave it on open skin. If you do find up inadvertently some gets on your arm, I urge you to get it off with water just as soon as possible. I was actually using a mixture of this and probably Brasso one time with a difficult horn, was trying to get the interior clean, and dropped some on my foot. It actually burnt through the skin within 90 seconds or so. I've still got a scar where it just burnt right through, so it can be tough. The only thing that I'm going to use Brasso for is if I've got a horn that's got a really sticky area in the tuning slide, and say it's just very sticky. I read recently that when you do unstick a slide, if you're lucky enough to unstick one, there's going to be a lot of grit in there, and just work that slide around once it's loosened up. Use that grit to clean as you move it back and forth. For some reason, I just don't like that idea. But if the tuning slide has got a lot of grit or dirt or gunk in here that's making the slide tough, I will use some Brasso directly on a valve cleaner, put it on there, and then use that to go back and forth to try and clean that out. This is very abrasive. I used it on the first couple of horns that I worked with for lacquer removal. I really don't like using it. I know it does say cleans and polishes. I just think it's awfully abrasive. I like my flitz so much better. Frankly, I think it shines easier. It's a lot easier to use. And don't be sparing with it. Let the liquid do the work, not your muscles. Okay, I think we've run over most everything. Your tuning slides, your first and third, granted, and I always start off with the Selmer tuning slide grease. If you need something a little faster than that, all it takes is a drop or two of tuning slide or slide oil. Hetman 1 is what I've used for years. I used to use Hetman 2 with everything. I'm dealing with mostly vintage horns. Then I'd get new Carroll brass horns in, and I'd realize I was actually slowing the valve action down a little bit. I think Ultra Pure is a tremendous valve oil. They're both synthetics, the Hetman and the Ultra Pure. This is a little bit thin. I think they make one that's a little thicker for vintage horns. If you've got slide, in fact, this is a Hetman 4, and it says light slide lubricant. You can actually use this in some vintage horns that have weak compression. If the valves have been wore down, you can use this. Of course, you'll have to have good springs because it's definitely a very thick lubricant, but it will work well. Okay, last thing I wanted to mention was keeping your horn clean. The most important area of a horn, to my way of thinking, is the valve, because this is what people see. Keep it shiny. But as far as we're concerned with cleanliness, interior-wise, I believe it was Jason Harrelson that I read, and he mentioned if you just pour rubbing alcohol, isopropyl, I got the 91%, they've got a different strength, 70, 80, 90, it seems like, if I recall correctly. Just pour it right in the receiver of your instrument, and then get your snake, work it down in here. That's going to clean all of the lead pipe. What'll happen is it'll draw to a fullness just before the tuning slide bend. You want to get down in there and dip and bring it up. Make sure that you get the instrument clean. Then you can pull your tuning slide out. Actually, you can pull it out halfway, and then you can see where it is, dump it a little bit easier. You don't want to get that alcohol on into the horn, or you'll lose your tuning slide lubricant. The alcohol will cut through that. If you do that once a week, is what Jason Harrelson said, I think you'll keep your horn quite clean, even if you're a little bit sloppy playing while you've got perhaps some Coca-Cola, tea, or something in your mouth. If you're an alcohol drinker, maybe that alcohol will clean it out. That's not my bag. But at any rate, I think this alcohol does a tremendous job. You talk about a clean lead pipe. Doesn't get any better than that with all the stuff that I've tried. Okay, taking a quick look around. Hope that I've covered everything. De-lacquering the horn, cleaning it, lubricating it. Think we're done for the day. Several people have asked me through the years how I clean horns. I am proud when I send a horn out of the way that it looks and the way that I've put it together. Hope this helps. Again, most of it came from trumpetherald.com, a wonderful, wonderful reservoir of knowledge. I really like that forum. The last thing I would say is, a lot of people do like a vintage horn with the original lacquer on it. And I know Christine Dirksen, who does the Con Loyalist, is big on this. And I understand if you're a collector, you want your collection to be as close to original as possible. I just had a nice old special good player here recently, and the bell had just a little lacquer left, and it was just so ugly I couldn't stand it. Personally, I like the shiny gold of the clean brass. I've had several vintage silver tones with the sterling silver bell. Lacquer traditionally just would not stay well on those horns. They always look dirty, gritty, ugly. I just like a clean look. Sorry, Christine, she's never bought one of my horns. But I do clean them up as well as I can. And if I were going to sell this, I'm having a blast playing it, but if I were going to sell it, I would definitely work to clean it up, polish it, make it the shiny brass all over. Hope that helps, folks. Hope you have a great day and you stay safe, not only through this coronavirus, but through any personal illnesses that you might encounter. These days do make us think solemnly on that. Hope things are well with you. Have any questions or suggestions, always feel free to post them on the comments. Hope you've liked the video. If you have, hit a like button there. I think that's the thumb up. Never hit the thumb down if it's mine. All of the competitors? No, I'm just kidding. But feel like subscribing. It'd be a pleasure to have you on board. Check out my other videos. Always welcome to comments, ideas, and thoughts. Have a great day. We'll catch you next time.